lions,
tigers,
bears,
oh my.
all that and so much more Busey on this episode of the Deadlights Podcast. Woo!
The devil's eyes.
We all go a little mad sometimes.
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
You're gonna need a bigger potion.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
Play a game.
Wanna kill 'em all? Wanna kill 'em?
You soon to be mine. Alive, dead, lives.
Welcome to the Deadlights Podcast. I'm your host, Sam.
And I'm your host, Matt, bringing you yet another deep dive into horror.
Welcome. Welcome. Please make sure you like, subscribe, turn on those notifications.
And please hammer those comments. Please smack them. Line them up. Smack them down. We want to hear from you guys. We want to stay in touch, in tune, know how we're doing, what you like, what you don't, and the types of stuff you want to hear about.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear from the fans, and I'm excited to talk about the movie that we're jumping into today. We got a nice little sequel for you coming today. We got P2.
P2.
Predator 2 from 1990, directed by Stephen Hopkins, written by Jim and John Thomas. The Predator returns to Earth, this time to stake a claim on the war-torn streets of a dystopian Los Angeles. We covered Predator 1. Predator. I believe in our last season, and that was an interesting episode, I'm going to be honest. That was an episode where for some reason, Leslie and I decided to let someone play a character. Ladies and gentlemen, Kendall Kennedy.
So, dudes, how you doing tonight? I come from pretty humble beginnings. My family is involved in crude oil. I just love America. I love American people, and I love American movies like this movie we watched today called Predator.
I recall.
And yes, I remember you specifically talking to me about that episode and being like,
Interesting.
I don't know.
An interesting choice was made, but it's okay. We all make interesting choices.
We'll make interesting.
A cool tidbit with that, too, is that I tie in to the previous Predator review because I was there for House of the Fall of Usher, and I got to stick my little prickly fingers into the bucket and pick out the next film, which was Predator, a dear favorite of mine, a franchise that is near and dear to me. So it felt very fortuitous at the time, and it only made sense that Predator 2 was going to be in our lineup.
I did not make that connection. You chose Predator 1, and then you chose Predator 2 for this season.
It was a little more at random, random choice.
You unknowingly chose it.
Unbeknownst.
So yes, it makes total sense that it's back. It's here for us to talk about. And I think that I always like the opportunity to talk about a sequel too, because I think that adds a whole nother layer to the movie. You have an expectation from the first film that's kind of always on top of the second film. And I think that over our discussion of this movie, we can kind of talk about, is it a successful sequel? Is it a not successful sequel? And I'm kind of interested to pick your brain on what you think a successful sequel entails and if it got there.
Well, not to mention we got John and Jim Thomas returning. They wrote the first one.
Writers.
They created Predator, brother writers, in tandem together. And so, they were very near and dear with how and where things were going to be steered forward from here. And it is very interesting how things ultimately unfolded within P2, how it landed and how it's perceived here years on down the line. But it is chock full of goodies. A lot of fun stuff to talk about.
A lot of fun stuff to get into, and I say let's just get into it.
Why don't we?
Why don't we open up
Pop the can of sardines.
We can. Let's see how this film is made. First of all, I just want to throw out that the setting of this film was released in 1990, but it was set in 1997.
Slightly futuristic LA.
Near future Los Angeles, which I do actually kind of love about this movie because you're able to get away with a near future aesthetic, change little things, make it a little more hyper reality.
Yeah.
And you can get away with it because you can just write it off as, well, it's the future.
Slugging into the future.
And I think it's always fun to see where filmmakers play with this idea of what the future looks like.
Yeah.
And we see Stephen Hopkins explore a couple different kind of fun things, from the guns,
The little scopes.
the very evolved criminal element of Los Angeles. Man, they are
Gangs
armed.
are rampant.
Armed to the teeth,
Yeah,
too.
yeah. Armed to the teeth.
My
yeah.
God.
And the amount of destruction they were able to get away with, too, in Los Angeles at the time. Obviously, a lot of things were done on sets in the Fox studio a lot, but they shot a lot downtown, and they had that opening scene, that fight, they had that street locked down for 3 weeks.
As Colombian and Jamaican drug fiends once again transform the streets of LA into a slaughterhouse.
You know, you book places down there and you tell residents, but in the end, no one really wants you there all night making a noise. You know, you get things thrown at you, bottles of piss or bags full of human shit.
One fun tidbit I discovered was the usage of squirt guns filled with ammonia to keep the rats away, to keep them away from power cables and otherwise, because they, of course, were just running rampant. I saw something else that supposedly somebody on set, like, even put a leash on a rat. I don't know. We're gonna that stands to be vetted out a little bit further.
I thought I heard that, too.
But I can certainly attest that they had to do something. You know, and a squirt gun with ammonia is a good and innovative approach for some pest control.
And I think that's a huge part of also what works about this movie is the production design, the aesthetic, the Los Angeles as a backdrop, and to hear that they're really like guerrilla style shooting, running on top of these buildings in these alleyways. It really does add to this grimy, dirty aesthetic that they're going for in this dystopian Los Angeles. And obviously they're heightening it with all the violence and these incredible set pieces. Like you said, the opening scene is such a good example of the level of violence and heightened reality that we have in this world. But what they were working with that was already there was, you know, I guess already perfect, and they used it so well.
Yeah, we were cleaning out alleyways down there to shoot in, and, you know, we'd find dead bodies under the garbage, and there were giant rats down there, which the grips would delight in putting on leashes, because they look like small dogs, and walk them around.
With that and a lot of the handheld aspects you're talking about, Stephen Hopkins came from having really more of a background in music videos up to this time. So a lot of handheld work and such. And it lent to being so much more grounded in the chaos of what's going on around all these people. You know, we got this slightly futuristic LA. They're leaning into ongoing gang violence was going on in LA at the time, so they're just, you know, extrapolating that out further. Plus, just a lot of earlier talks of global warming at that time, so it's really hot. It's just a scorcher.
Drought-ridden Los Angeles welters in agonizing heat. Drug lords wage bloody warfare in the street. Yet another open conflict. Oh, fuck this! Get me out of here!
Everybody is sweating profusely this whole film. And
They got the dew spray on everybody.
yeah, then a lot of great behind-the-scenes shots, just like ripping up their shirts, just so they could get that full chest rundown on the clothing there. But the setting was a fun and like that, you know, the nice next step. You want the concrete jungle. Originally scripted as New York, ultimately ended up changing to L.A. But that overall setting played very well into the tone of everything.
Yeah. Something that also goes in with that are these characters that we have running around this world. Obviously, we have our predator, our alien running around, but the people that are chasing after him are pretty heightened as well. I mean, within the detectives, we got Bill Paxton, who plays Jerry.
I said, because your husband is dead, you killed him. And you know what she said without missing a beat?
No.
She said, I stabbed that son of a bitch plenty of times. He never died on me before.
They think they call him the Nighthawk or something.
No, he's the Lone Ranger.
The Lone Ranger.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Gary Busey, the head of the quote-unquote FBI. of course, he is like so over the top.
Grab a seat. Enjoy the show. This is history.
Again, in this world, it works really well. I think the person who is actually not enough over the top in some of these scenes is Danny Glover, the main character, Mike.
Well, yeah.
Mike Harrigan.
Harrigan, there we go. Sorry,
Detective
both
Mike Harrigan.
fumbled on.
There's like this weird, like story of two Dannys in this movie for me, where in the action scenes, like the first scene that we see him, we see Danny Glover be the resourceful Mike Harrigan who's getting out there. He's brave and he is going to be the savior for the city. But then we get him in like a scene in an office and he doesn't even look like he's listening.
You will extend him your full cooperation.
Which means you're cutting off my dick and shoving it up my ass.
And I don't know if it was just how it was edited or how it was shot or he's just not really given much, but it's just like he's just like going from like 1,000 to 0 sometimes in this movie. And it's like really, it's kind of like a jerky experience, his performance for me.
So what the fuck happened? Shit.
And I think that's broadly a big takeaway most of the audience members have, Predator fans otherwise, coming to this, is that Glover just feels a little flat. And you keep seeing him really like confused and then subdued and just feels like, you know, kind of constrained. And like he'll blow up a few times and there's a couple good moments of that intensity, but they're really muddled away. I mean, one of the first early good ones we get is is pulled away from Predator's vision and then Predator's hearing. So it kind of distorts a lot of things that we're ultimately getting there. And upon the recent viewing, it picked up on him telling one of his sergeants or other, I'm trying to remember who it was, but that, they got him pushing too many pencils, essentially. Or that he's pushing pencils and being a lazy ass or something.
You're a soldier and you take orders. Now don't push it. Push it as far as I can every day, Phil, because we're fighting for our lives down here. Now you're downtown, pushing pencils and get killed.
Of course, a nice nod to Dutch in the first one.
What's the matter? The CIA got you pushing too many pencils? Huh?
But ultimately, I agree. It's like I love Danny Glover, and I want to defend him to all ends. I mean, he's such a soft-spoken guy. One thing that pulls you out of it, like consistently in a lot of these scenes, they're probably dealing with a lot of chaos, and to be able to get this audio, there's a lot of ADR.
Oh yeah,
and that's just, and when it's so noticeable, it's just like it's a tough separation.
It is like, I struggle to find a scene where they're not ADRing.
You want to make me proud, kid? Take your bag of tricks, stay with them, find out where they take her.
Hey, don't worry, Lieutenant. Surveillance is my specialty.
Okay, then. Just get going.
I also like Danny Glover a lot, and I want to like him a lot more in this movie, but he just doesn't give me too much. Yeah. And we talked about it before this, too. Like you said, there was 20 recuts of this movie. Like, who knows what was lost in the editing.
Within that too, both the writers have talked about how much more things were, in the original script, things were flushed out a lot more. Yeah. So within that, absolutely, we don't know what we could have gotten a little bit better context to that could have made the Harrigan character make a little bit more sense and just be able to be like, oh, okay, and be able to ride along with that.
I wanted to
that much better.
I really wanted to like him more. Because he's our main character, we're following along with him the whole time. But yeah, unfortunately, I was just not given much. That was one of the biggest letdowns I felt like for the movie.
Cooperation is my middle name.
Why don't we get to the meat?
Yeah.
What we're talking about in this movie. I mean, we are coming into a very chaotic world. They establish pretty much from the top that the Jamaican and Colombian gangs are pretty much running the streets of LA.
Everything I own, they shot up the Facebook. My microwave, my steamer, my grill. You fucking vandal!
We are in a world of violence. I mean, I think that's probably a big commentary just in general in the Predator verse, is this obsession with violence. And the Predator only pops up when it's super hot or when it's super violent, when chaos is going on. And that's like their vacation. That's where they go hunting.
Drawn by heat and conflict. He's on safari.
I think that it's an interesting comment on where we are currently of like the Predator chose to come here to us at this moment because we ourselves find that we are in chaos. We are fighting amongst each other.
It's that point. It's looking for the trophy kill, the biggest. So it's like, at the beginning we get the oversight of Los Angeles with this chaos. We're in the infrared vision, panning over the city, and then fine tuning down into this confrontation. And we get a lot of cutaways again overhead of the Predator, and that's when he first really locks in on Harry.
Get him out of here now!
But yeah, not to mention the two other gangs. We get the great Henry Kingi, and as El Scorpio, who is kind of like at the beginning the head, at least the main gang member that we see at the beginning of the Colombian cartel, who has this like scorpion flask that he pops up and just rips a wicked. Get him on top of this rooftop. He sees the Predator, the first time we see the Predator in cloaked vision up behind, and Danny ends up shooting him, and the squibs rather and stuff that were on him kind of pushed him a little further back because he was on a 13-story building and was actually doing the stunt fall, and he almost missed the airbag that he was supposed to land on. The whole crew saw him and saw how far off his mark he really was, and were like clinging, just holding on to their breath as he went down.
Tony Hope, live with Hardcore. On the scene and in your face. It's like Dante's hell down here.
And there's also this like continued obsession with violence through the news reports that are going on the entire time. Hardcore is like always there on the scene, and there's a bunch of reporters that are there always on the scene. And again, I think it's just going towards this like this fascination that we have with like conflict and pushing that into people's homes, and like it's just so ingrained in this world that we're set in that it makes sense that the Predator would come here.
And they used Morton. There it is. I almost lost it first. I believe it's Morton. Morton Downey Jr. Was the actor in the real life news broadcaster who like really kind of gave us that first trash TV news news look, and he was really popular at the time. So they had him and at least one other kind of well-known reporter at the time had a few scenes in there.
Harrigan! More victims, more mutilation! Fuck you!
He would get into like, hot confrontational news things and stuff, but the dude got caught sometime after Predator, like hiring some like Nazi actors to like stage. He started doing some Nightcrawler shit where he's creating news stories, and his career fell out from there.
Mr. Downey Jr., no.
But yeah, like to the first time we're starting to see that kind of exploitation via the news of things, and how heightened that was increased. That whole opening scene, we have all these live TV reporters, and they were recording live for that. So we have this very cool cutaway sequences and stuff to the live reports of all this chaos ensuing in real time. I mean, it's like, how could you not kind of have that as an adage and an element to this film? It was pertinent in a way.
It was constant too. It was like they kept going back to it throughout the movie. So it was kind of a cool thing that they kept weaving in nice transitions to other scenes. Yeah, I thought it was a cool use of the media. Let's get into the cook. How they actually cooked these things up, how they presented it to us. The function of the revealing of the Predator. And I think this is a big part too, where the sequel comes in for me, is in the first movie, we had no idea what the Predator was. We had no idea what it looked like. And so through the whole movie, you're trying to figure out, like I said, what the fuck kind of animal or being could do this, until we finally see what it looks like. And it's such a satisfying look to it. And then when we finally have the mask off, and it just works so well to build the tension to that final climax. Whereas in this movie, they are doing the same thing where we're not seeing the full Predator the whole time. We're getting little hints throughout the way, but I'm almost asking myself, why are we doing that? Because we know what he looks like. We know what we're going to get to in the end. And so I'm almost just like, why don't we just show him more? Why don't we just see him more interacting in this world, this very chaotic world? I just felt like there was no tension because I already knew what we were going to get to.
And I think it was just the whole reason they were holding on to that was for Harrigan to have the moment of that reveal where he pulls off the mask.
Mm-hmm.
You are one ugly mother. Motherfucker.
To that point, there's a bunch of other characters the Predator is seen and kills who Harrigan's not around whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, even like the biggest, you bring that point up, the like the place that it made the most sense, and I'm trying to think, you know, chronologically in the film, you know, how far along this necessarily was and if there would have been something appropriate even sooner. But King Willie, when the gang leader of the Jamaicans, immediately after Harrigan has a meeting with him, and he says, I don't know who he is, I don't know what he looks like, but I know where he is. And he's looking like up and around. He doesn't really know. I mean, it's like Predator's just watching him at that time. He's overhead.
He actually, I don't think Danny Glover gets any information from that conversation.
There's no stopping what can't be stopped. No killing what can't be killed.
Hey, make sense, man.
The Predator descends down from a top of a building, has this great parting of the water, slamming into the water, and then walks his way forward, and he's cloaked at the time. The water, as we know, as it does, diffuses like the electro suit of his that is able to cloak him, and he's revealed to King Willie. King Willie has this little staff with like I think it's like a scorpion head or something like that on the end of it, and he pulls out this tiny little pencil-thin blade, ready to fight. And Predator has his easy way with him, but honestly, like that would have been a great, I think, first time to see him, and especially King Willie to be able to see the actual creature full on itself.
Or the majority of the movie was an investigation movie. It was like these cops are looking at these crime scenes, getting the clues. They're like, oh, maybe it's this guy. Maybe it's this guy. Let's go talk to this guy. But the entire time we're just thinking, no, it's not. It's the Predator. We know it's the Predator.
That's about 35, 40 feet. No rope, no ladder. The guy weighs about 190, 195 pounds. You couldn't carry him up there.
This kind of feels like convoluted for no reason. It's just like the Predator is going to present itself to you at some point. And it finally does. And then we do have the really cool final confrontation with Mike v. Predator. And I think that whole like third act is great with them fighting each other. But to me, it just takes too long to get there. I wish we had more of the Predator full form. I don't know. I guess just interacting with the environment more. I guess I wanted to see him actually interacting with the concrete jungle.
You know, and we okay, so there's two really good tidbit or, you know, moments that I will say that at least they're not much of any, you know, it's more of just like a passing sequence, but we get the Predator crawling a building at one point.
We do.
I love it.
Great crawl.
And then when we get into the like kind of Aztecian penthouse that the Colombian kind of like the Colombian drug lord or whatever in the States up in LA. What was fun with that is that the Jamaicans come in to perform their kind of voodoo rituals. It would be Haitian, but for their own accords of this, I'm no expert. But the Predator always strings people up, and they were talking about, you know, they're doing a ritual in there, and they hang I can't remember the guy's name, but they hang him upside down, naked, and then put a big old blade right through his, right into his stomach, right around the sternum.
Shit happens.
And so, you know, when they first come in, they were just like, well, we got these guys strewn up. This is classic Jamaicans. But then we got all these other skin Jamaicans hung up, just full red flesh.
They did this to themselves?
And so, I mean, I liked a little bit of the play with that, of like how nasty and stuff the gang members could be in situations and when they're going up against their rivals. And then we will just like have this obvious separation of church and state here that we're looking at.
And I think that's great because that makes sense in the Predator's character. He comes to the world, looks for the fiercest warriors, takes them out. So for him to come and land in LA and he's taken out, first of all, the Colombians and now the Jamaicans, that all makes sense to me. I mean, and now he's looking at Harrigan, the fucking hero cop, who has clearly proven himself as the fiercest warrior on that end too. So I just wish they got to that faster. I just wish they got to Predator v. Harrigan a little quicker.
Son of a bitch. Who you really chasing, Keys?
And I will say, one of the big plot areas we've not delved into yet, which is so much of what we want to eventually be able to talk about.
Oh gosh.
Is the sweet Busey. But before we dive there, what I maybe will say, part of why the plot was so slow to get Harrigan there was because of that subplot.
We're attempting to prevent King Willie's voodoo gangs from taking over and controlling the entire West Coast.
Busey lands in a crime scene, literally in a helicopter with his merry band of stick-in-the-ass prancers. And they're just, they're all running along fucking track team style. And Gary Busey comes in and it's all his crime scene. And
and they're blowing him up. They love him.
Who the hell are you, Keys?
The last person in the world you want to fuck with.
Busey comes in and he's essentially just taking over entire jurisdiction over LA. Like anything that happens in LA, he's like, it's my crime scene. And that's where him and Harrigan really bump heads. And we get some great Busey being Busey lines.
Harrigan, don't you show up in the damnedest places.
And that is absolutely a highlight in the movie for me.
Absolutely.
It keeps it fun.
By all means. And this was the first film that he returned to, the first film that he returned into post motorcycle accident in 1988, where he was pronounced dead for several minutes.
December 4th, 1988, at 1:15 in the afternoon, I hit the concrete going 45 knots. And I had some out-of-body experiences, and I went to the other side. So there's a real curious element in what is out of this world, and we're just merely a speck in the whole thing.
I mean, short end is just his whole outlook on life obviously drastically changed from then. And he has a whole lot of introspective views. Where they're channeled and coming from, it's hard to say, but he is not fumbling words. He is, and I'm not talking to the character that we're seeing here, but a lot of the good behind the scenes bits that you would see of him on set and what he is talking to of like the Predator lore already.
These outer world life forces that come in have these self-defense mechanisms that they can exist anywhere, anytime, any place. It is our job and our objective to go capture the Predator, sit him down, have a talk with him, find out why he does what he does. If we don't achieve that goal, we will be turned into vapor clouds made of small pink particles known on Earth as blood.
And it's just hard to track where it's coming from. And they all said he was a hoot on set, not necessarily too difficult.
You get in the movies and what happens? You get some sunglasses that cost $5,000. You lose them in the chopper, they take them away, you never see them again. They say it's an e-ticket ride, but it's not. It's a Fox ticket ride, and I'm having a ball.
He's got a lot of positivity that I assume so much of it does stem from that near-death experience, and then he's just trying to provide a lot of different outlooks and vantages on life. I mean, a lot of it doesn't make any fucking sense, but that's okay, and we're all here for it. Running through a briar patch naked at midnight backwards.
Listen, you're going to get a lot of really good behind-the-scenes Busey clips.
You're going to see it sprinkled all
You're going to
throughout.
hear a lot of them in here, probably one right now.
Maria and I have the same birthday, and she loves onions and garlic.
This girl loves onion and garlic because that's the only thing the Predator will go for. So she eats onions and garlic. They look like Oreos, and I'm not kidding you. If I was kidding you, I wouldn't be here. I'd be somewhere else in a different suit of clothes, working in a regular job.
If we're going to the cook of this movie, his performance next to, Danny Glover's kind of flat performance, it just kind of takes away from Danny Glover, and I just want more Busey. I just want more of those characters that bring this excitement, this life into it. for the most part, we're following Danny Glover through this investigation, and just want to get through those scenes. Maybe Danny Glover felt that too. I just want to get through this scene.
Yeah, and I mean, we finally get what feels like Harrigan and Predator finally really kind of building up to it. He's chasing him, following him on the rooftops. Harrigan's driving in his car, and then just so conveniently gets like rammed by the Merry Prankster crew of Busey's boys. And it's like right next to his like headquarters.
10 years ago, one of his kind stalked and eliminated an elite special forces crew in Central America. There were 2 survivors. That's right, Lieutenant. Otherworld life forms. Huh? A fucking alien.
Yeah, they want to utilize his weapons, of course. Because, again, we're obsessed with violence. We need to utilize these things that we don't understand. And, I mean, Busey obviously feels the full force of a thing that he does not understand by getting cut in half. And somehow his torso suspends in air when his legs... he has to be like holding the meat like this for that to make sense. And his legs just kind of topple down.
Get out of here, Harrigan. I want to save your ass. This is between me and him.
Yeah, I can't. Maybe that was a little bit of a slow motion effect or something in that, but still, it wouldn't make any sense. Though the upper torso would fall right in tandem.
I wanted to see
the lower half.
I wanted to see the upper Busey.
Maybe
Busey
he wrote
bust.
something into it, and he was like, you don't get to see me dead.
Nope.
No, it's too personal. It's too heavy for me. Coming right back out of, I haven't died myself personally.
I mean, okay, fair.
Maybe there's something. Is there?
That being fair, whatever.
It's hard to know.
All right, let's get into the thrill. Let's talk about
thrill of it all.
Our Predator.
Our involvement in Predator 2 was exciting because we got to further our characters and kind of flesh them out and figure out more of the Predator's culture, because there was going to be multiples in this movie.
We had the fortunate first film to learn what we would like to do better, and now fortunately we have the second film and we can do those things that we weren't able to do in the first film.
Really, again, one of the best parts of this movie is this final set piece that we get into. When we get into the Predator's lair, we see his quote unquote world, this kind of like bone mixed with metallic. So it's kind of like this biomechanical kind of ship. And I always just love that set piece. We get to see how he lives, his like kind of jungle world brought into this concrete jungle. His trophies obviously are so cool. We have the alien skull in there.
Skull stolen from set.
Of course.
I think the idea of putting the alien head in the film was Stan's originally. It was a great idea.
We just kind of went wild and fabricated up a bunch of different alien skeletons and whatever to go in that case. And kind of a nod to that comic that was going on at the time. We did an alien skull and put it in there. Just kind of an inside fun thing.
That's really where we get to see obviously him full force, full face, and the other Predators coming in.
Each artist that was working here kind of had one that I said, you come up with, here's some general paint schemes, ideas, and you add your touches to this one and you decorate them with your own jewelry or whatever you want to do to it. And so, each one became a fun project for all the artists working on it.
For all these other movies, whether they're good or not, he is an iconic character. He is an iconic horror character, iconic horror image. And I think it's for a reason. He really is a cool creature. I love his design. It's gross.
It is. And I mean, to the fishnet on his body. It's just like, it's so fucking weird, but I could not do without it.
Yeah.
It is essential.
The elder Predator, we call them the grayback, kind of like a silverback kind of idea. That was generated out of the old Predator mold, and we made some different appliances to go on his face with some extra ridges and to just change him. But if the fans out there look carefully at his suit and everything, even though he's got a different paint scheme and we kind of dressed him slightly different, that's the original Predator that's been kind of doctored up. So his head shape is a little different. It's more like the original one, and just some tweaks added to him, and it's Kevin playing that character.
maybe you were saving this, so I apologize, but the fun tidbit from that sequence that we do get, because we get all these other Predators on the ship.
Yeah.
Danny Glover was a big Lakers fan, is a big Lakers fan, and was reached out to the LA Lakers at the time and got a good 5-6 handful of players that were tall and slender to come fill out those outfits.
And Danny was a huge Lakers fan, and because it's so long ago now, I can't remember exactly who we got for the costumes. But I know Danny asked the Lakers, I think we got a couple of the Lakers at the time, to come and be in the costumes, because we needed these really tall guys who were athletic and who could support a huge amount of weight.
Danny dancing
coming
with
together
the Predators.
Them and rest in peace, Kevin Peter Hall.
Yeah.
And who also, Kevin Peter Hall, studied African dance for a lot of just like formulating a lot of the movements. And again, we have this masked creature the whole time. Even the Predator face is so cool, and you can get an array of emotions from that, but it was so much of the physicality of those movements that conveyed so much of just the Predator. It's like not like the Predator's so scared, but there's a little bit of bewilderment, confusion, excitement, and then just like just control of his body.
You have to, there is a total different level of acting when it comes to character actors like that. There's a certain amount of movement in the body that you have to do to convey the emotions without using your face. Like, that's not easy to do without it looking super overdramatic. So it takes a certain kind of art, and it makes sense that they brought him back from the first one because he's great. He really, embodies that like Predator tribal, scary, intimidating figure.
Yeah, sure. All to the hands. Let's do almost like little jazz hands almost, but they're always splayed out. The stretching, that kind of like low angled squats, kind of lateral squat, like positions he gets into.
Always love seeing him heal himself and work with the best.
His whole medic kit.
Yeah, the medic kit is great.
Where he's breaking up just like tile and glass. And then using like this own element of his,
like blue goo.
Yeah, what I had something fun here, but yeah, and basically to create this healing agent. But to the point too with the suits, he had just done Harry and the Hendersons, and then he's coming into this role, a lot of suiting up like a doctor. Kevin Peter Hall had some sort of AC unit kind of fixated into his suit, but it would break down here and again. And he, at least once, but maybe I think a few times, did pass out. And, it's like you're doing a lot. You can't really see yourself. You also can't see how the texture of the overlay of the skin and all this stuff looks and is moving. I'm sure he did stuff in front of the mirrors, a lot of whatever the preparatory work to get the best that he could out of himself in the suit and those movements, but that's just that layer on top of it of just like fighting for your life in there.
Yeah. Oh, totally. And it's impressive to fight through that and still get the performance out of it. Yeah, and I think that we got a lot of for it being cut down a good amount. We still did get a good amount of cool kills. I think we already talked about that first sequence. A lot of great action in that. Explosions, fucking cars crashing into each other. I think that Jamaican massacre scene is one of the best, fight sequences with the Predator because of the variety of weapons that he uses. He uses his arm claws. He uses his
net.
He uses his little side gun.
That spear they made too. That it was like 3 extender.
Oh my god, that
end.
spear is awesome. Yeah, we see it all in that scene.
And they had more. They cut a bunch of weapons
and
that we didn't even get to see,
which is really cool. I think that in that way they really delivered on the Predator violence. But in the other way, I'm like, damn, what did we miss? Because there's some like cutaways where I'm like, really? Like Bill Paxton's character, Jerry, like that's a cutaway. We see him strung up and that's it. That one I'm like really unsatisfied by. And then also kind of Danny too. Danny, he just gets pulled up into the rafters and we get a little blood splatter on his necklace.
Oh, God! Please,
There was that tidbit of, on set in LA one day, they were going to get a rooftop sequence that they needed him for, and Stephen Hopkins couldn't find him, and they were losing daylight. And he's like, I'm about to lose this whole scene. And he was running around looking for him, and then comes to find him like being interviewed out on the street.
So I rushed across and I just grabbed him and said, Ruben, we're going to go. And he kind of ignored me, and everyone ignored me, so I didn't know what was going on. I said, guys, we have to shoot. And I kind of grabbed the earpiece and helped him out of the chair. So and I started talking what about the scene was about and walking away with him. I didn't realize I'd taken him off live. He was being interviewed by Joan London from New York live on Good Morning America. And so I was in deadly trouble because I'd, cursed on screen in front of many millions of people. And it looked like I treated Ruben badly, who was a sort of a Latino icon. And I got death threats on the phone and all sorts of terrible things. And of course, I didn't mean to do any of that.
And he caught some good flack for that afterwards. He also said he had some sort of 15 minutes of fame, Stephen Hopkins walking in the streets being recognized for a few months, which I thought that was kind of a strange, because he was very embarrassed by it, but then also kind of like, seemed like he was kind of a little revved up.
And actually, since then, they've never done a live interview. That was the last one they've ever done, but I was very famous for about 10 minutes.
I've got some feelings about this director. I don't know. He's got a little smarmy side that I'm not exactly the biggest fan of, but
hey, I'll give him the benefit of the
decide.
doubt. I don't know enough yet to make any full decisions. Really could have just been situational.
Like a redneck on a weekend and goes hunting for trophies and fun, and hopes to leave with enough stuff to impress his friends.
Let's get to the final ride. Let's park it in and get to the final ride of this movie. I think that for what it is, I think it is a very entertaining and satisfying action movie. I think we get a lot of really cool set pieces. We get this heightened reality, this hot, violent LA, and they really sell that on us. And then we get our Predator. We get a pretty badass Predator. So I think that for what it's trying to do, it does deliver pretty well. I think there are just like some really funny tidbits too in this movie that I did write down a couple. Like, first of all, that guy that did that 13-foot drop or whatever, in the movie, he lands on a picnic table, and the picnic table doesn't break, first of all. It's the smallest target for him to hit. He doesn't break. And he also lands in, like, guacamole.
Yeah, he's in some sort of green sauce.
Yeah, is that, like, did they
Some
do
sort
all
of
that
salsa
for the
verde.
guacamole joke later?
I don't know, but even Glover comes up to him and grabs, like, lifts his face up by his hair and drops him back in it.
I'm like, was this for the guacamole head dip or whatever? I don't know.
Some of just like out of pocket lines, sequence we get the first Busey to, like, giving a little more backstory and stuff. And you guys saw in our Hook intro.
Lions, the tigers, the bears. Oh my.
How could we not include that?
And was that scripted? Maybe. I would say probably still. It's just, sometimes you get something like that and it's just like, you just want to think that it's just fully Busey'd on out. But
That's true.
I hope to say there was some sort of ad lib there.
Great Paxton stuff.
The Paxton little anecdotes that he was given were all great. A few of them were actually apparently true. Like, I can't remember the first one he's talking about. It was overheard by some other paramedics or something. Picked up on that story.
And the doctor says, I need a semen, stool, and urine sample. I say, gee, doc, I'm in a big hurry. Can I just leave my underwear?
So it was just dropping some light. But, they just wanted this just like kind of over-the-top character, really wanted him to yup it up, and it's like, all right, well, yeah, it's just like, give us aliens. But he is so much fun. Danny Glover calling the Predator pussy face.
Okay, pussy face. It's your move.
Yeah, that's pretty good,
iconic.
Too. Yeah, how could it not be?
The old lady. So I guess I saw something with the producer Joel Silvers at the time would do a lot of things where his movies would kind of bring you into somebody's apartment or house or something at some point to just kind of create a separation of the characters we're following with just real people in the town and stuff. So in that sequence, the Predator falls, catches a pipe, rips it back, busts through into a bathroom, and then we were just, he goes through his healing phase. Harrigan slowly shimmying his way down and then crawling up the pipe to get in there. There's an old lady in the house watching Jeopardy.
It's all right, I'm a cop.
I don't think he gives a shit.
as a kid, that shit made me laugh so hard. I remember that was always what stuck out to me. Some of the most of the film was like these few broad stroke moments, and I always would wait and love that moment so much. But there is something that just it feels right, the way it's tied into that moment, and to have like kind of this little step away in rerouting ourselves loosely into just like the landscape, the reality of what we're around here.
Again, because we're in this kind of like weird heightened world, it doesn't seem too far out in the moment at all.
And also just grandmas from that time, that era, they were a little more, I don't know, stoic, but they weren't shook as easy, I suppose.
I don't know. Yeah, seeing a grandma say that, it's funny to me.
When we were in the jungle, we always talked about what possible sequels there might be, and one of the fantasies we had is what would this camouflage effect look like? What would the Predator look like in an urban environment?
This is another pretty good installment of the Predator-verse, and it ends with Harrigan defeating the Predator and receiving a gun.
A gift,
a gun from 1715.
Yeah, a token.
It's just kind of a throwaway detail, or could be, but it spurs off a whole other comic book and verse within the Predator verse.
That was actually the interesting thing. So going back from the first Predator to this one, they had to wait a little bit to see kind of the momentum of Predator before they had the go-ahead from Fox to do a sequel. And it was based off of success of comics that were being written at that time following the first one. And in those, we get one comic that's like Predator 1718 or something like that, and in that he fights a pirate and goes toe-to-toe with this pirate from the 1700s, and so that's where the actual the influence for the specific gun that he tosses to Harrigan ultimately is. And the writers also mention, the commentary watching what the writers was done probably around 2005-ish or so, but anyways, it was after the first AVP, before the second. And they were talking about the director of AVP was influenced from the alien skull being added to the trophy room in Predator 2. They were also hoping, it was like, want to see Predator and all these other historical timelines and stuff. Yeah. And jump forward to now, a few years ago, we got Prey. We got Predator Badlands coming out. We just had Predator Killer of Killers, where he goes through 3 distinct periods of time fighting worthy warriors. And they just keep stacking onto this verse that deserves a lot of love. I mean, we had some sidestep missteps, Predators, The Predator, which so excited for Shane Black to come in and do that, and it was just fucking doo-doo, just a doo-doo film. And that really kind of slowed things up for a little bit until we had Trachtenberg come in here and now revitalize things with Prey, and how brilliantly done that was, scaling things back in time, making the Predator a little bit more primitive to what his tools were and everything. And that really was like what I think, opened the floodgates to give us so much more here. So
yeah, I'm glad, like you said, it's finally getting its due. I'm glad that we got to look back at this one too, to see where it all started. Let's get to these Smash Pumpkins. Let's see how the Predator 2 stacks up in these pumpkins. Would you like to go first, sir?
Yeah, so, for ratings, sometimes it's always going to be interesting. This film just goes back to, I saw Predator originally in my sister's apartment she was living in Seattle, or I think it was in Capitol Hill. Correct me if I'm wrong. At the time, and I was just actually back home recently and was recanting this memory with my sister that I thanked her. Really, it was just like, because it had such a formidable impact on me at the time that it came out. So I hold a little nostalgic value with Predator 2, seeing it from a younger age. My long-windedness will ramp up here, and I am gonna go with a 2.75.
2.75.
2.75.
Very cool.
We're nearing the 3 cusp, but there's a lot that's like just a little messy and just kind of like it's kind of frustrating into this, that you just don't feel so smoothly hooked into it the whole time.
Yeah.
I will say the 4K that we watched though, holy fuck! Every time I've seen this movie, it seems like it's just been really grainy and distant and distorted, and there's a lot of dark sequences and stuff, but it was crisp. The colors were popping. It was very beautiful to
Could
watch.
finally see some people's faces in some of these scenes. Jesus Christ. And I'm on the same wavelength as you. I really do think it's a pretty successful movie, all in all. But yeah, there's some messiness here. And I think, unfortunately, they were fighting a lot with censors. And a lot of movies get cut up and recut because of that. And sometimes it suffers because of it. So I think, yeah, it feels a little messy. And I wanted a little more Predator, unfortunately. I wanted the sequel. We mean the double the amount of Predators that we had in the first one. So that was a little unsatisfying for me. But the Predator that we got, really did like the Predator that we got. I'm going to say 2.5. I'm going to give him right in the middle. 2.5 Smash Pumpkins, P2. How about the creepiest kitty? Do you have a standout moment that you think deserves to be the scariest moment?
Scariest moments. I've been going so back and forth on this one. But ultimately, where I think this one has to go for me, man, I wanted before to go to Danny Boy's death. Because when I was a kid watching this movie, it was that scene of him going there at night. I remember the first time seeing it, I was like, I wanted you to be in this movie a little bit longer. Why are you going back to this crime scene at night? We know this ain't going to end well. And it was just the tension that kind of built through that. It's not all in a way anything scary or revealing. There's no jump scare or anything like that. And we don't even get his just death. We just see his necklace fall and his horrible scream. So I think I will falter from that into the Colombian penthouse scene in sequence, and more so really just kind of the dread that is left over from the Predator killing them all once the cops arrive to the crime scene of what happened, because they're coming in pitch black in there. There's all these strewn up bodies upside down, flesh ripped from them, and it's just a very visually striking scene.
Initially, that was honestly what I was thinking too, because such an effective part I remember from actually watching the first Predator was the first time they find those bodies strung
in the
out.
trees. Fuck.
Man, I remember the first time I saw that, it terrified me. And so that scene definitely is an homage and the ramping up of that. So yeah, I'm glad that you pointed that one out. And the one that I picked is right before, in that scene of the Predator attacking all of the Jamaican gangs. Honestly, one of the Predator weapons that scares me the most is that wire net that just turns and gets super, super tight. And so when he shoots that guy with that net, and there's I think it's a 1 second, maybe 2 second shot of his face against that net, and it's just kind of cutting in. I'm like, no, I'll give it to that.
Well,
I'll give it to that shit.
And what's great with that too is that we have to break it down a little bit here. Maybe somebody in the comments can help educate us and finalize where this came from. But we've seen that mechanism since in a multitude of different films and stuff. Of course, AVP, but there was even. I guess I slightly go to Final Destination. Was it the first one when the barbed wire fence shoots through that guy and but just kind of getting halved? That's a little bit different, but
or bisected.
Even going to the Counselor, if you remember that film, that Scott film, that I think it was Ridley Scott. That Michael Fassbender. Brad Pitt is this kind of high-fluting kind of cowboy lawyer in the city. And they're dealing with some cartels. I can't remember the exact law premise, but basically that you get this cutaway sequence of him walking out of this building, fast shit going through the city, and you get this jogger, and it's intercutting quicker between them, and then the jogger runs by him and hits a collar basically around his neck, and it has basically a steel cable on there's a little box that's just ramping it, and he's trying to get his fingers between his fingers, and he just sits to the floor, and then his head gets popped off. So anyways, that type of mechanism of that type of shit, whether we got nets and they're just going to singe right through, but it's
very Saw. It's very that constriction, terrible. So yeah, that's why I gave it to that. Wow. Predator 2.
P2, baby.
P2. Wow.
God bless you.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on our review of Predator 2. That was a fun one.
Very fun. That one was loaded up in the chamber, and I was like, so excited to fire it out there to you all.
Fire it out like that net. Hope it
fire it out just like that net. Catch some of you all.
Catch y'all
in the comments.
Yes, and speaking of which, if you would like to get in the comments, please follow us at the Deadlights Pod on YouTube, Spotify, Instagram. Please like, subscribe, and turn on those notifications.
Notifications, and reach out to the email as well. Please, any anecdotal stories otherwise you have from anything in the industry of horror faction fandom that you know, any adjacency that you have, family, friends, or what have you. And we also would love, to be able to talk to people directly and maybe even have some interview types in the future times. So
would love to talk to you. Would love to hear what y'all have to say. Also have to give a big shout out to Playground Social Studios, where we're filming this at. Thank you, Rudy in the booth.
Huge shout out to Rudy in the booth.
And thank you, Michael, for these amazing TVs.
Mike TV, 30-foot CRT.
And also Andrew Degner, who's been making us look all good in the side quests that we got going.
And they're going to continue. And boy, they are exciting.
Man, I'm very curious where Leslie is at this point. Who knows?
Leslie?
We'll find her soon.
She tunes in and out at her discretion. But she chose me. She put me here. I didn't choose this path.
She did it.
But I'm here to serve you guys and have a sure shit good time.
And he's fucking stuck. So if he doesn't like it, too bad. And if you want to check me out, you can find me at BP Pritchie T.
If you'd like to check me out, you can find me at MR_Andreessen.
And also check us both out at the Deadlights Pod. But until next time, let's get spooky, y'all.
Let's get spooky. Spooky. Predator vision.
Doink. All right, let's cut it.